As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
So good, so good, so good.
Just in and so good. Thousands of spring finds up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of fresh reasons to rack.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Vince, Calvin Klein, Rag & Bone?
Obsessed.
Why do we rack? For the hottest deals.
Save on Madewell, Kate Spade New York, Sam Edelman, Joe's, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
The Athletic.
Hello, Formula E fans, and welcome to a special edition of the Race Formula E podcast with 8 weeks between races. We've been sitting around twiddling our thumbs, Sam, so we thought, why not drop it like it's hot and do a special podcast to go through various bits and bobs that have been ticking along in the Formula E world while the racing cars have been doing things other than what they were intended for. So, how are you?
Yeah, was this going to be an emergency podcast at one stage? Probably not emergency.
I think emergency is probably over-egging it a little bit.
Well,
that's why I went with special.
That's all part of what we do, isn't it? Over-egging it. But actually, we don't need to over-egg this one because we're going to lead with a story which I think when it comes to the season review that we do in late July, I reckon this is going to be in the, as Brian Clough would say, in the top one, young man, of stories of the season. The proposed takeover of MSG, which obviously runs the Maserati MSG squad, one of the 11 teams in Formula E, and it's a bit of an epic. We've both kind of been involved in the sense that we've both met the supposed owner of the investment group.
Prospective.
Yes, prospective. Yes. And it's a bit of a...
No longer perspective.
It's a bit of an epic, to say the least.
Too much perspective.
Yes, well, listen, I think a bit of a refresher first off about...
Yeah, where are we? Why do MSG need a new owner? And and how did we get... It's a bit like one of those American TV shows. What was it called? Quantum Leap. So how did I get here? Go on, take us through it.
Maserati MSG, the model that they have, the way that they're set up in Formula E is relatively unique. They're an independent team, of course, essentially. The Maserati element, for those who see the cars and don't know the story of how they're set up, they would assume that it is a factory Maserati entity. It's not. Maserati essentially bring, let's call it...
They almost like license the name to them, don't they? It's like by having one of the most famous car brands in the world, it gives the team the ability to sell off the back.
Yeah,
of that.
I mean, look, if you're going to be crude, if you're going to be really crude about it, they're essentially a sponsor, really. But economically, they don't bring a massive amount of money. They got a fantastic deal with this, which included the supply of powertrains, which came from their stable mates, shall we call them, brand mates within the Stellantis umbrella, which is DS Automobiles. So the exact same powertrains that are used by DS are used by Maserati, but badged as Maserati. And Maserati are a registered manufacturer in all but name, essentially. But they don't bring hardware to the party. They bring their brand, and that is part of the naming rights of the team. They're known as Maserati MSG, but the whole entity is run through MSG, which is Monaco Sports Group, which really is, again in all but name, the Venturi entity, which began life as Formula E began life back in 2014, owned by one of the wealthiest people in the...
One of the OGs?
Yes, in Monaco, Gildo Palanca, who is no longer part of that. He essentially sold the team on to two key investors and majority shareholders in the whole entity, Scott Schwid, American businessman, and Jose Aznar, who is, again, an entrepreneur and businessman in the financial world, and also happens to be the brother-in-law of Alejandro Agag, the founder and still chairman of Formula E. Now, where the need for a new investor began is that with that model that I explained, Maserati is all over that car and the naming rights of that car, which means that there is very little space for new investors, new partners, and new sponsors. So the team actually financially has struggled in the last few years as investment has been sought and not found in a particularly significant way. So a new partner, new investor, new owner has been scoped out over the past 2 seasons or so. This is where we start to get chronological in our story, V2B. So both of us were at Jeddah. I was there a little bit earlier than you. Prior to just getting on the plane, I picked up the story that a new investor or a new investment group had been found. And I got some details of this, which included the strategy of having some celebrity investors involved in this entity. Similar to how Kiro have introduced Idris Elba to their makeup and their structure. So on the eve of the Jeddah E-Prix, both of us met with the new prospective investor and owner, and subsequently a media roundtable with ourselves and a small number of other publications had a discussion with this gentleman whose name is Brooklyn Eric, who is a tech entrepreneur. I think is an adequate sort of tagline for Brooklyn. Yeah, very engaging person, as we both found. Very enthusiastic, big plans for this acquisition, but it was all under embargo, and on the understanding of that, obviously we didn't run a story on this. So it was to our sort of synchronized surprise, yeah, that we looked at each other with mouths agape that during qualifying he was essentially announced, because he was on the qualifying footage, the live footage at the time, with a tagline, a graphic stating that he was the new CEO and chairman of Maserati MSG. This caused a bit of confusion, to say the least, and we needed an explanation as to why it was been announced when the media had been told there was an embargo, and it was all, let's face it, a bit of a mess, to say the least. Subsequently, the plan was that...
One might say a sign of things to come, Sam.
Yes, I think so. I think that's quite accurate. Initial plan was that this would be announced on the Thursday after the Jeddah E-Prix. That was deferred and postponed for a week, and then it was another week, and nothing happened. So I think quite within our rights, we sort of dug a little bit as to what was happening here, and we subsequently found out that some obligations had not been met, and that essentially the deal collapsed. And this was in mid to late March, and it's obviously a bit of a mess, to say the least, and the way it was handled in terms of informing the media of what was happening, and the fact that us, as in the race, were essentially denied breaking this news on the understanding that it was an embargo was all a bit unnecessary, I think. And ultimately, it collapsed, and we ran the story last week that it had done so, and what this might mean for Maserati MSG if they can salvage things and find a new investor, because clearly the one that they'd hoped for ultimately turned out not to be a particularly serious proposition.
I mean, we don't need to delve too much into what happened, because it's clear, ultimately these things, various clauses are built into deals, and if they're not, if they don't come through on the day they're supposed to, then things don't happen. But where does that leave the team now? Because we're, midway through the season. We know that there's, as you mentioned, some financial pressure on them. Where does it go from here?
Well, it leaves them in a very fragile position. And as we understand it, they are receiving help and assistance from Formula E. Whether or not that's the licence reverting back to Formula E, that's not been declared, and we've not had confirmation of that. But the presumption is that is part of the way that they're going to be run, certainly for the short term. That the key is, as I mentioned, to find a serious investor and one that wants to back the team and get it into a position where it can get back winning again. I mean, ultimately, when you look back on it, I think of the last 2 seasons, they've won 2 Grand Prix, 1 each in the last 2 seasons. That is an amazing achievement, by the way. I think
absolutely
Cyril Blay, who has stepped up to be the team principal, has done a sort of Herculean job, and so have the team. And it's a very fine team there at MSG. They are troubled financially, and it's very difficult. But actually, from an operations and running races and delivering results, they've punched massively above their weight. So there is a great amount of potential in that team. But of course, all the teams are great. All the teams are very talented, and all the teams have great potential. But you can't do that on fresh air. And the situation, while I don't think is short-term critical, I think that if they don't find an investor or key new owners of commercial clout in the next few months, or certainly by the end of the season, it's going to be very, very difficult for them going into season 12. So we just hope that this, if anything, that this scenario, the way this has played out, hopefully highlights to some important people and people with resources that this is going to be worth investing in, and hopefully ring fencing what they've built up there in Monaco, which is a very capable Formula E team.
Yeah, I mean, I said they've been in it since the beginning. They've been a regular front runner, maybe not championship contenders, but they've racked up the wins over the years. They're a good team, and they deserve to be in a position where they're able to build on that. And they've got 2 great drivers. I really hope the best for the people there, and that there's some resolution to this that allows them to carry on, demonstrating what they can do on track, and rather than worrying about what's going on above them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of questions to take away from these episodes over the last 5-6 weeks. I mean, from a sort of personal standpoint, the due diligence aspect of this has to be sort of looked at, and how this has transpired has been, I think, sort of quite sort of problematic of the way that this is all panned out. And I think,
but this isn't a new thing in motorsport, is it? Right? There have been all sorts of, and it's almost like a fun game to play, isn't it? When you sit down, we talk about the various fantasies that turned up in paddocks, promising the world, being from various Nigerian royal families or whatever they proclaim to be, and it all turning out to be nothing. So this isn't new, is it? This isn't something that's unheard of.
No, absolutely not. And as you know, one of my niches every Christmas Day is occasionally writing about historic events that have been similar. I think to these kind of situations, and they do happen. They shouldn't really happen, because ultimately what they do is they waste a lot of time and energy and resources. But they do. I mean,
that's the nub of it. That's time thievery. and in many ways that's the worst theft of all.
Yeah, I concur wholeheartedly with that, and it's a shame. Look, but I think that the key takeaway now, after the dust has settled and the wreckage has been picked through, is that Maserati MSG get back on course and are able to be moulded into a position where they can use all their skills and technical aptitude to still be a real force in Formula E. I really hope that happens. I mean, Formula E can't afford to lose a team. The last time that this happened to this extent, in not dissimilar circumstances, probably not quite as dramatic in terms of what we know but aren't allowed to really feel as though we're allowed to report at the moment, is the DS Techeetah situation, whereby the Chinese owners and investors in that looked to sell their interest and really didn't get anywhere fast, and ultimately that was essentially disbanded, and the Penske the Techeetah entity, or the Techeetah staff, went mostly to work with Penske, and of course the DS element merged essentially with Penske to create what we now know as a race winning and top team. So I think really the Formula E has 11 teams. I would say 3/4 of them are relatively healthy. There are probably two, possibly 2.5 teams, let's say, that are struggling at the moment. And clearly one of those is Maserati MSG. Formula E are doing their best to help them out. But there has to be some resolutions to make sure that they have at least a medium term, if not long term future very soon. But I think there's going to be lots of changes in the structure of the teams anyway for Gen 4, and I think that moves us seamlessly, VW, into our next tranche of looking at something, a subject which is the Stellantis behemoth. Yes,
I mean, obviously all of this is playing out in a backdrop where all car companies might be facing a 25% tax hike on selling their cars in the US, which is the last thing many of them need, especially brands that sit within the Stellantis world. So where does Maserati go from here?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So notionally, Maserati are already confirmed for Gen 4. That was done last November with great fanfare by Formula E and Stellantis. Now, we believe that actual registration is under a general Stellantis banner, so it doesn't necessarily mean that Maserati are going to be part of Gen 4. I think if you ask Maserati, and they will say, oh yeah, we're committed because we've already announced and we're going to be in Gen 4. I'm not so sure about that, and lots of other people are not too sure about that. I think there's a very reasonable chance that Maserati's involvement in Formula E ends after season 12, which is next season, and that they're replaced by another brand in the Stellantis banner. That could be, we understand. I think really the three that are most key to replacing Maserati are probably either Opel, Alfa Romeo, or the other one which I've forgotten. No, I haven't. Citroen. So I think those three are the most likely one of those three.
Yes. Well, all good motorsport brands, right?
Yeah.
All brands with really interesting motorsport histories. I mean, Opel have been out of motorsport for a long time, but 70s and 80s, the Skoners
Absolutely.
and Cadets and
even with the ITC, right? So
Calibras,
ITC days,
the Williams built thing, that was amazing.
Just get
so I'd quite like to see Opel back, and maybe they could rebrand it as Vauxhall for the race in London.
Yeah, we could get Jeff Allen to drive for him. Everyone's a winner.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Maserati, we're not saying anything new here. It's been reported widely that automotively they're in a pretty poor shape at the moment. They're selling very few cars. There doesn't seem to be a massive interest in their electric products. Alfa Romeo, obviously they had a dalliance with Formula One most recently. They have a great heritage, as do Maserati, of course.
In a very similar model to what the Maserati one is an FE.
Yeah.
What Alfa did with Cyber in
Exactly. And Citroen, of course, have been predominantly rallying, but have done other branches of sport as well. And I think that they're a brand that feel as though they could be quite dynamic in Formula E. But let's not forget DS in all this. So the situation is delayed and has been delayed for many months now because primarily, I think, because Carlos Tavares, who is a passionate motorsport player and occasional racer himself and a big believer in Formula E. I know that because I've spoken to him in the past at races, and he really believed in Formula E. He is now no longer the head of Stellantis. As a temporary interim active chief there, which is John Elkann, who obviously is synonymous more with Ferrari and Fiat. But at the moment, there is not a direct replacement for Carlos Tavares, and that is delaying, I think, the strategy of what a lot of the brands are doing in motorsport, and that includes Peugeot in the WEC. Our colleague Thibaut Villemont ran a story a couple of weeks ago about the fact that Peugeot look likely to continue in the WEC. Now, in a way, and it may seem quite tenuous, I think that's quite good for the decision making of what might happen in Formula E. I believe more now that Stellantis will still have two brands in Formula E. I don't think one of those brands is going to be Maserati. I think one of those brands, hopefully, is going to be DS, and the other one could be one of the three aforementioned ones that we talked about. The big question for me is now, and this is where it gets a bit complex, is the makeup of those operations. DS and Penske has not been a happy marriage in the last couple of years. They broke their famine, yes, at Jeddah with Max Gunter's excellent win in the first race there. But actually, off track, it's a very tetchy partnership there. There's different philosophies at play there, and it doesn't seem to quite gel as well as it looks from the outside. I think there's probably quite a slim chance that DS and Penske will continue into Gen 4. So therefore, what happens to Penske and what happens to DS? Now, here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that Penske, which last year set up a facility called Penske Powertrain Labs in Whitney, near Oxford in the UK, that
they're building a jet engine.
it is bracketed under a special projects business, but I believe that actually that probably could include either a full manufacturer Penske operation or one that includes another manufacturer, or even a hookup with a already registered manufacturer. What I believe is that Penske and DS will split. Penske will either go with an incumbent manufacturer, Porsche, Jaguar,
but badging their technology.
That is, I mean, that's a detail which could be explored and could be possible. So let's say that Penske do that, and Jay Penske has invested a hell of a lot into Formula E, and I think with him being a very successful businessman, mainly in the media industry, but other areas too, I think he will invest and build up something that could be a Penske manufacturer operation. Not necessarily in season 4 straight away, but in the future. We know that they've talked to Hyundai, and Hyundai, I think, as we've already reported.
You don't watch the TV ads, do you? Hyundai.
Hyundai. It's an old school pronunciation, isn't it? Hyundai. It's a lot more difficult than Kia, isn't it? So I think really that's probably their structure, that they could have either a badged or a partnership with an existing manufacturer and then move on to something else. DS, now, would it not make perfect sense for DS to have then their own entity with that 12th license that we've been talking about for a long time?
Ooh, I see.
Potentially under a Stellantis Motorsport banner, whereby DS keep everything they've got in Sattery in the south of Paris, and they use all their expertise they've had in the last decade to have their own self-sufficient entity as the 12th license, and invest in that as Stellantis Motorsport. Then what happens to MSG? Does MSG then pick up the other brand, the Citroen or the Alfa Romeo or the Opel, as we said? That, I think that is one sort of network of possibilities that could happen. But None of this is confirmed. It's all been worked in darkened boardrooms at the minute, and they are running out of time in the sense that Gen 4 is upon us. The manufacturer test cars are delivered to manufacturers in September, so we're talking about now a time frame whereby these deals
that's minutes in the corporate world, right?
It is. Exactly. So these decisions have to be made in the coming weeks, if not days.
Interesting. Well, I guess one person who would have a very big part of that is your old mate Phil Charles, and I believe you've spoken to him.
Indeed, yeah, always great to talk to Phil. The politics and the things we've just talked about are very much off his remit. Doesn't stop us trying, though, does it? So obviously I was able to do that, but the main thrust of the chat is talking about Gen 3 Evo, how he's seeing it so far, and also a little bit about the preparations for Gen 4 and where it may take Formula E in the future.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Phil Charles, as ever, great to chat to you and catch up and see what's new and what's happening as we head to the fourth round of the season at Miami. New circuit at Homestead, so everyone's looking forward to that particular challenge. And we're amazingly a quarter of the season into this season already. And one of the defining elements of it, of course, has been the all-wheel drive element, which has delivered quite a lot of topicality in the majority of the races so far this season. I remember speaking to you pre-season about this and how it might manifest itself in the races. So from your point of view, Phil, what have you learnt so far? And is there much more to understand about this new technology and how it's influencing qualifying in the races?
Really good to talk to you, Sam, as always. So good first question, all-wheel drive. And as we mentioned pre-season, we expected it to be a big step. And probably globally or from the outside, it's easy to see that in the races, it's a big chunk of performance. And that's definitely had a big strategic change, a big step for us as teams and drivers. You can really see that when you take that attack now, you can put yourself to the front very, very easily, or much more easily, should we say, than before. So strategically now we have to box around that a little bit. If you hit the front at the wrong time and then you get kind of eaten up by the others now that are doing the attack mode after you or in a different way, it can be really quite strategically painful. So you've got to time it well. It's very powerful, and making use of that kind of extra goodness that you get with attack mode now in all-wheel drive is really, really key. But I think more than just the strategic point, there's actually some really key other subtleties in there as well. You might or might not see from the outside, but it has an impact on the rest cycle, on the battery, so the way that the battery derates. And there's a couple of methods there. There's a pure cell temperature, and there's an absolute average power, like a rolling average. It does impact the cycle that the battery sees, so you get a slightly different derate profile in the battery depending on how you've used your all-wheel drive and when you've used it. It also has a big change on the car balance, and that's probably something well worth talking a little bit more in the future about, because the way that you now tune the mapping around the driver and the four-wheel drive is quite advanced. It's quite different, and the drivers get a lot more power to change the car balance with the all-wheel drive. So there's something big going on there that we're all evolving quickly around. And then finally, it affects the tyres as well, because you might have a rear tyre that's absolutely screaming at you. You go to all-wheel drive and you can just take a little bit of pain off that rear tyre and put some of it on the front. So you get a chance to to kind of redistribute some of the tyre load as well. On top of all of that, you're looking at the efficiencies of the overall system and your overall energy management in the race, and in qualifying, particularly that balance or the mapping aspect to extract the maximum performance out of the all-wheel drive. So lots still to do in terms of really optimizing, understanding, and strategically using the all-wheel drive in the race as well.
What I always find exciting and interesting to analyse, Phil, when there's new technology and new sporting elements that are thrown into the soup of races, is how different drivers approach them, and are you seeing sort of disparities or nuances in how your two drivers are executing their all-wheel drive scenarios? Are some drivers finding little trade secrets here and there and sharing those, or maybe not sharing them as teammates often do? But I mean, that's what generally happens, isn't it? Drivers find their own way and their own little tricks of the trade, don't they?
I think you have to link the drivers to the teams, obviously, first and foremost. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking on the team side. I'm talking about the way we go racing. And absolutely, what you've just mentioned is something that comes with any new technology. And this is a big one. It's a big one, and it's very visual in the races, as we've mentioned before. And so you're seeing that some of the drivers, or the teams and drivers, are starting to pick up their attack mode use in different ways. And they might be exploring some of the strategy that you can use that to position yourself in the race. So it might be that you use an attack really early, you pull a little gap, and then you put yourself in fresh air. You might get out of the difficulty with the traffic. You might get yourself in a position where you can do something clever with the tyre, just to get the tyre settled at a point where it's just about to go out of window, for example. So you're seeing some real nuances. You're seeing some drivers, some teams, or the driver-team interaction, trying things that are different. And we're learning all the time. And I think over time, you probably see when you bring in a new technology, initially there's this kind of storming phase. And then over time, it all kind of converges to something. And it may be that strategically, we all start to use the attack mode in a similar way, let's say towards the end of the race. And then it starts to become, right, now, do I do something a little bit different? At the moment, we're not doing something a little bit different to try and beat the norm. We're doing something a little bit different to understand. And there's still a lot to pick up on. There's still a lot to evolve. And certainly strategically, there's a few games at play, but also in terms of the mapping around the drivers. And the drivers are all still learning the best way to extract the all-wheel drive and really to map the car around themselves. But it's really track to track dependent, even corner to corner, not even, definitely corner to corner dependent. So it may be that in the first few races, we've seen a different delta between cars. As teams, we analyse each driver and we can say, well, from 300 to 350, from normal mode to all drive mode, this car did this step. This car did a smaller step on average across each of their two drivers. So you can start to see some sort of pattern, but it may well be that one car or team has optimized really well at a particular type of corner. It might be a tight corner, for example, and they've mapped really well to optimize traction out the exit of that particular corner. But you go to the next track a week later or a couple of weeks later, and it might be a very different pattern. So you can see early on that we're still learning and that nobody's got it completely right, and there's still a lot to play for. So you hope that you're doing your homework at a rate better than everybody else, but it's still in that new phase. It's still in that really high rate of learning. So yeah, just like you say, it's new. It's got some early learning that we've got to do, and that's delivering different results, variation in performance at different times and different tracks. So always an exciting phase.
And you touched on it earlier, Phil, about the balance, the emphasis on the balance of the overall package. And clearly tyres and vehicle dynamics is a key element of that. And we've, one of the raft of changes, of course, been a new product from Hankook. Sort of percentage-wise, how are you feeling about how much has been absorbed from a knowledge point of view about the new tyres? Is there still a lot to find with the new one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. So, people that have worked with me in relative recent years will laugh when I say tyres is one of my favourite topics. I can talk tyres all day long with you, Sam. So I've got to make sure I don't bore everybody on your podcast now. But what I would say is the tyre is a really tricky scenario. I think we're about 20% of the learning, but it's more complicated than just 0 to 100%. You have to think of a tyre, really, I think, in engineering terms. And if I bring you to control systems, in control systems world, quite often we talk about something being a black box model. And what that black box, I'm about to talk about black tyres, but it's not the colour. Black box models is a description of something where you haven't got access to what's inside that box globally, kind of You think about that as a picture. But inside that box, there's a load of equations, and we're trying to, from the outside, interrogate the way that box, that system works, and understand what equations are inside. But normally in that situation, it's very difficult because quite often it's describing quite a complex system. Well, that's the tyre in a nutshell for you. There's something happening inside that tyre that's complex, and we can measure it in certain ways. And when you do those measurements, you understand bits of the way that it works. But you take it to the next something, let's say tarmac condition or weather condition or drive cycle, because the track, corner after corner puts a different cycle through it. And suddenly it behaves in a different way to the way that you measured it previously. So it tells you that it's a multi-equation problem with lots of parameters to solve. And so the tyre is almost a permanently challenging and ongoing problem to try and solve what's going on inside your black and round bit. And so the tyre for us is a new product, like you mentioned. It's definitely changed the way that it works and the way that we have to work. And you can see that very simply in the number of preparation and cool down laps that we're doing between quali push laps and in the practice sessions. So you can see it behaves very differently. The teams are adjusting to that. But we're still early days of understanding those equations that are buried inside, or let's call them pseudo equations. Whatever's going on inside that tyre, we're still trying to understand. And there's a lot of detail to get on top of there. And genuinely, I think we're about 20% at the moment. And it's really exciting as an engineer because you're learning each week and you can put performance on the car. And this is where I get carried away and start talking. So I'll shut up now. But you can see that just in listening to the couple of things that I'm getting excited about, there's a lot of opportunity for you to put performance on the car if you get your tyre understanding right. If you start to detail that black box, and then you can beat the others with being able to use it in the right way.
So does that mean you only have to pay your performance engineers 20% of their salary now, Phil? You've just got the other 80 to come.
I'm not sure many of the tyre and performance and race engineers would be keen on that. But yeah, we're all stuck into that tyre, that's for sure.
So we've seen 3 different winners from 4 races, Phil. We've seen 3 different manufacturers: Jaguar, yourselves, and of course Nissan, with Roland taking 2 wins. It's all extremely close. If you look at the points table, it's still ultra close between many drivers and pretty much all the key manufacturers there. Do you think there'll be more of a swing this season in the distribution of points and wins? Last season, Jaguar and Porsche powered cars won, I think, all bar 3 races. Already this season, it's much more spread out. Do you think that's going to be a trend we're going to see as the season progresses?
Oh, for sure, this first season of the 2, the twin year homologation, is always more variable because of what we've got to learn and all the things we've just been describing. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we're seeing that initial variation. It also shouldn't really be a surprise that over time, the teams that are well organised and perform well in the long run start to get on top of all these things we talked about. They start to map those equations for the tyre. They start to understand the attack. They've got the offline simulation and the driver in the loop simulators to understand some of the setup parameters. So over time, you tend to see the better groups come out to the top. But initially, for sure, there's some more variation. As we're learning, you may get something right early on and get a performance advantage. And over time, the others will slowly creep back up to you. So there's definitely a good amount of variation that we're seeing at the moment. And I expect it will start to tail off a little bit. But having said that, and I'll be the counter argument to that, this season, and you saw it happening in the last 2 seasons, we're all getting closer and closer as a grid. Formula E is a super, super close championship. And that's making the racing fantastic. It means that engineers and drivers have got an opportunity each week to make that little difference and put their car and driver at the front. So I do believe that underlying that trend that I just described, a bit more initial variation and then it kind of closing to a certain group that do well, that you will see continually some opportunity for the drivers that are performing in an outstanding way and the teams that are getting on top of something at a particular track or particular scenario that do have the opportunity to win. And that's something that's hugely attractive of the Formula E Championship. The driver and the teams, the engineers, have a real opportunity week to week to jump your performance up and get real results. You aren't kind of stuck at a level that your car is able to achieve. I'm missing a chunk of whatever, downforce or powertrain. In this championship, those bits still make a difference if you get a really good setup and put lift on the car. If you get a really good powertrain, it will show through over time. But the championship's so tricky and the teams are so close that you get a chance to get it right. And if you get it right, you can put your car well into the podium places. So to answer your question, I'm not surprised because there's been a few changes between last season and this one. But the championship's super close now, and you only have to work down the grid each week. I look at the qualifying groups, qualifying group A and B, and I think my driver is in this group. Let's have a look at it. Oh, blimey, that grid's really, really, really tight. Any of the top X in here could take pole or push you out of the top 4. And then I look at the other group and go, blimey, this is an amazing group. Look at all these amazing drivers. Look at all these amazing teams. So it tells you just how close it is. You really can't write anybody off at any race, because anybody can get a big result if you put all the eggs in the right way. You suddenly get a great cake of a race weekend. So apart from the terrible cake analogies, you can see that it's a very close field.
I thought you were going to go the omelette way there for a minute, but you went the right way. Cake over omelette every day. So we're talking to you from an antechamber, an office in your base in the UK. Max is on the sim as we speak. There's, I think, a few people who were sort of surprised that Max hit the ground running so well with DS Penske after his move from sister brand or stablemates with Maserati. But actually, there shouldn't really be a surprise. I know that you probably haven't been that surprised, and neither have I, because we know how good Max is. But at the same time, he's essentially driving the same powertrain, isn't he? And has an amount of technical knowledge. How were you appraising his start? He's also beaten Jev 3-1 in qualifying, which is I suppose a nice bonus for Max. So how are you looking at the way that Max has begun life in black and gold, Phil?
Well, yeah, I think you've spotted a couple of things there. There's definitely a help in the fact that he knew the steering wheel, he knew some of the systems of the car, and he knew generally how that manufacturer's car works. So he's jumped between sister teams, and there's not the full complement of change there. But having said that, and the devil really is in the detail, the way that teams work once you're within the team. I've moved in my career through a few F1 teams and a couple of Formula E teams. The devil of the detail in terms of the way that they work is quite significant. And every group is different. We've certainly got a particular type of way that we work, and we've got a particular type of person. You tend to attract a certain type of person to work in the team. Like-minded tends to happen, and a certain approach tends to attract that type of engineer, and you pick that type of engineer. So you see that when you jump between teams for the driver, they've got to really acclimatise themselves with people first and foremost. And what I've got to say is that we've got two amazing drivers here. Jev, at the end of the day, he's a double world champion in Formula E. You can't do much more than everything that Jev's done. He's also a qualifying grandmaster, huge number of pole positions. So Jev is the ultimate reference. And Max, you've got to say, has jumped in, got acclimatized, got to know the people, got to work in the way that this team works incredibly quickly, and that's delivered good results. And like you say, he's had a win. I actually wouldn't have known the qualifying stats off the top of my head, not because I've not been watching qualifying, but just because the view from my seat is that we've got two drivers doing an absolutely amazing job. So it wouldn't surprise me. They're both performing very well. It wouldn't surprise me or necessarily jump into my reference that one's got more positions than the other in qualifying. Only that they're both performing very well, and that's a real testament to Max doing his homework, getting into the group, gelling well with the group, and getting up to speed very quickly. So to answer your question, it's not a surprise because he's been doing the homework really well.
Phil, did you just say you didn't watch qualifying, or you don't watch qualifying? You're the last person that I would assume was swilling wine in the Emotion Club. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely watching qualifying. I was giving you the context that it's not that I've got my eyes closed. It's just that those stats wouldn't jump at me because I know that when I'm in qualifying, I'm getting excited by both cars. I'm rooting for both equally because I'm excited that they can both deliver massive results, and they are, and that's a real privilege. And don't forget, Jev won the qualifying award last year, so I definitely had my eyes open for that because it was really enjoyable all through last season to see Jev deliver some massive qualifying results, and it was a real pleasure.
Now, I'm quite interested. We've not spoken since Jeddah, and I'm very interested in understanding what you were debriefing about. Not the details of the drivers or how their races went, but specifically the pit stops, which was we saw for the first time there. What were the key learnings, Phil? And actually, from a learnings perspective, is it something that you will look at in forensic detail and understand how you can do things better, as I'm sure most of the teams are doing right now?
Yeah, well, I can tell you one of our favourite things is forensically analysing what we've just done at race weekend. So we've definitely done that, Sam. Definitely done that. And I can say also I'm very biased because we did the first pit boost race and we won it. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm always going to give a very glowing report. I actually think, and I'll be completely honest with you here, Sam, when the technology first came along, there were a few niggles and I was a bit worried, and I was kind of openly worried. I didn't kind of pull the punches. And then I was won over by the technology. That certainly the last months before we did this, the tech had become really robust in the testing that we'd done as part of the dev testing. And so it was suddenly looking like this is a real scenario that this could unfold very quickly. It did. And to get it through a race weekend, I think it did very well. So that's the first thing. I was cautious. I then became a fan, and then very luckily we won a race with it. So I'm now a super fan. So I'm up for the fast charge. I can tell you some of the reasons why I'm up. I think it adds something very different. That's the first one. And the second one is from the team perspective. It does give opportunity for you to try something strategically different. And the equations that you've got to play with are very different as you go through the grid. And in fact, you see that with our two drivers in Jeddah. We'd got one at the front in Max's case, and then we'd got Jev, who just qualified a little bit out of position where we thought he could be. And we wanted to get him into the lead pack. And we did two very different things across the drivers. We used the attack mode with Jev to try and launch positions, get him up there, get him into the kind of lead part of the game. And the attack mode and the pit boost as a combination of two factors now give you, if you kind of combine those two together, give you a really significantly powerful opportunity to gain places in that window. So, and we did that with Jev. On the flip side, with Max, we played a different game. We were in a strong position already. And actually, these races, even with the pit boost and that extra energy that it adds into your pockets, bear in mind in Jeddah, the number of laps was the same Saturday to Sunday, but Friday to Saturday. But the first race had got that additional 3.85 kilowatt hour of energy in your pocket. Even with that extra energy, these races are still very energy sensitive. And so with Max, we had position at the time as we went into that pit boost window, and we made the call slightly different to Jev. Instead of burning energy at that point to gain positions, we actually said, right, let's play a bit more of an energy game with this car. And we accepted to lose a couple of positions. We probably lost a few more than we wanted to. But in the other way around, we decided we'll take energy into the last third of the race. And so you see very different races, very different approach. And those equations change as you go up and down the grid. So that offers a really big strategic opportunity in that window. And we used it differently across the two cars, achieve what we wanted to do at differing levels across the cars. But you'll see as we go forward that that's an opportunity for cars to progress or to play different energy approach to the whole race. So I'm really now a big fan of it. I think it was a great race. Like anything, the proof is in the pudding over time. So I'm sure another cake or pudding based analogy there, Sam. But I think over time we'll see how the races look externally. Are they as exciting as that first one? But I think that first one was a great one.
If we're talking puddings, I think it's can be so complex. It's definitely a strudel. And I think Monaco is going to be it's going to be a strudel race for sure.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out in one of those double headers at Monaco.
I think so. You're making me very hungry, or I'm making myself very hungry.
Well, listen, all these new things, all these new elements, all these new parameters that challenge you and the drivers and everybody in Formula E are going to be not obsolete, because I'm sure a lot of them will stick around and there'll be elements that go into Gen 4. But as we look at what's happening in Formula E, it never stands still. It's always pushing. There's always new things and new innovations. And it's not long now before we see Gen 4 cars out testing. And we're expecting the deliveries of the manufacturer cars to be in September. First question on that, Phil, is how are teams and manufacturers going to juggle that program with continuing to race with the Gen 3 Evo? You've got experience, of course, from Gen 1 to Gen 2 and then 2 to 3. So you know what's coming. This is absolutely the busiest, most intense, and I suppose ultimately a pressurized time for a team and a squad structure. So but knowing you'll be looking forward to it immensely.
Yeah, I will be looking forward to it immensely, but it is tricky. I think I'd be lying to you if I said, "Oh, it's no problem. It's a breeze in the park." You've got quite an intense race period, as you've seen the calendar this year. The calendar it's a little bit sporadic. There's a couple of breaks and then there's bang, 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 week on, week off. It's not like F1. F1 at the moment are doing a triple header, I think, at the moment. That's really, really tricky. But they don't have the testing that we've got. And that's the point. They're doing lots and lots of races. That's hard on the personnel to keep the race scenario ticking over like that. We're different. We've got a slightly kind of compressed calendar at times where it's busy. And to really fit testing in between the race calendar in that week on, week off period, for example, that we're coming into now, if it was this season now, that will be very difficult to do. So there's a real balancing act there. You've got to play a game within the resource that you've got. You have at times you've got to focus on what's coming up, and at other times you've really got to say, well, that's great. I'd love to do a bit more Gen 4 work right now, but I've got a race coming up next week. So I've got to balance that out. I've got to pick times and I've got to pick the use of the resource carefully to make sure I can keep both of those programs going. Because quite frankly, you can't afford to stop or ease off on either one. You've got to do the best you can in both programs. Particularly with the testing, you need to get out there early, understand with the main game that we play through the whole season is with the tyre. So you've got to get out, understand the tyre early, really wrap around some of the energy management, some of the chassis changes around that. And then you can maybe take a break and do a little bit of sim. There might be a chance for you to have a little bit of a think in that window, but you've got to get going again at some point to continue that learning and make the best kind of spaced out view of your learnings in between those races. So you're absolutely right. It will be a tricky period. There are a few breaks in amongst it, and you've got a bit more time, perhaps a little bit more time than we've had in the previous dev windows. But nonetheless, it's a busy period, and the best use of your people is key there, is making sure you optimize and don't leave one of the programs on the side, because they're equally as important. They're both worth as many points, but you can't forget, and you must keep pushing on in both directions.
I was lucky enough in Jeddah, Phil, to spend some time with Vincent Gallardo from the FIA, who I think we probably agree is one of the best technical minds out there in terms of experience and understanding all electric technology. Vincent told me that actually he believes that Gen 4 will be such a step, and that the pace and performance of the car won't be far off Formula 2, or will be as quick as Formula 2. I mean, this is the biggest step ever, isn't it, in Formula E? We're going to see something pretty special at the end of next year.
We are, and so I've known Vincent for many years. We kind of were intertwined at Renault F1 all those years ago. Kind of 2009s, 10s, that kind of window. So Vincent's hugely experienced, and the FIA are very fortunate to have that experience level in the game there. So that's a big asset. I've got to be a little bit careful what I say here. I can only extract some of the info for you that's in the public domain. So there's a little bit that Vincent said when you interviewed him recently, and there's a little bit obviously in some of the tender and some of the other info that's out there. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that it is a big step. I don't know the comparisons to other champions. I think that's kind of really irrelevant, to be honest, because the way that we race and some of the real finesse items within our championship are really, really key. We don't carry the downforce up to this point that other championships have done, for the better in a lot of terms, in a lot of ways that we race and the tracks that we've raced on. But having said that, now we're definitely about to make a big step. And I think Vincent alluded to the fact that within the tender there's 2 aero packages. So that's something that's different, something that will take a lot of thought as we go into race weekends. What time we invest on each of those packages and how we go about our race weekends. So that's going to be key. I think he also let on that there's a couple of other interesting changes in the powertrain, particularly around the differential spec. And then I think he also let out that there's a fairly big change coming in the tyre. And, we've had, that has been a fairly big topic in almost each of the questions that you've asked me today, because it's such a big thing in motor racing. That's one of the biggest denominators for performance on the car. And you've got another big change coming there for Gen 4. So he's alluded to the fact it's a big step. The little bits of information that I know and I've got, I can back that up. There's definitely a big step coming. That's really exciting for the championship and a great direction. But it does mean things will change again. And you've got, as an engineering group, you've got to be ready for that. So you kind of asked me the question, how do we start preparing for that? You start thinking as soon as you can, and you start trying to get your head around what that might look like, so that you can try and preempt the others. You can try and do something more clever, get in there early with your understanding, and try and really prosper because of that. So that's the answer. is to try and really get your head as deep as you can, do as much simulation, understanding, brainstorming as you possibly can, and then get a bit of a march on your opposition. That's the key to it. And so we're all doing a similar thing. You tend to keep the little bits of information that you find out really close to your chest, because the last thing you want is the paddock rumour mill to give away something good that you might have thought about. So it's a very cagey window. It's a very get your heads down and understand the future and try and really steal the march on the others, like I say.
Well, all that's left, Phil, is to take this glorious opportunity to inform us of what Jay and the gang have got sorted for Gen 4. So over to you. What's the big plans for you guys?
Well, I mean, as you know, Sam, I really enjoy talking to you about anything race and anything engineering based. But there's a couple of things I like to keep close to my chest. One is the drivers, how they're getting on and what we're up to with drivers. And the second one is the team general, people and our plans. So my apologies. I'm going to keep that really, really close to my chest. And I think you'll enjoy whatever we do in the future is all I can say. I think we've got a really good future with some really good scenarios that are unfolding. So, I'll keep that to myself. My apologies. I do like to tell you all about the racing and the technology, but that's something I'll keep to myself. So.
Okay, well, at least I tried, Phil. So we, for those who are interested and haven't read it yet, I did a piece about a week ago now, hypothesizing what the plans of Penske and or DS and denominations might be in the future. So if you've not read that, go and check it out on the-race.com. In the meantime, Phil, thanks very much for the chat. Always a pleasure, and look forward to catching up in Miami in just a few days' time. Thank you very much.
Definitely, Sam. Take care and see you soon. And thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Hey, I'm Robert Vinlow, and I'm from New York Times Games, and I'm here talking to people about Wordle and the Wordle Archive. Do you all play Wordle?
I play it every day.
All right, I have something exciting to show you.
Oh, okay.
This is new. It's the Wordle Archive.
What?
Oh, okay, that's awesome.
So now you can play every Wordle that has ever existed. There's like 1,000 puzzles. What day would you pick?
Let's go back to my birthday. My first guess is gonna be birth because it's my birthday.
What made you guys do an archive?
It's one of our most requested features. A bunch of our other games have archives.
Like the crossword puzzle?
Yeah, exactly like the crossword. You know, you can catch up if you missed one, which is pretty cool.
Wordle Archive.
Oh, cool.
Now you can do yesterday's Wordle if you missed it.
Thanks so much for coming by and talking to us and playing. New York Times Game subscribers can now access the entire Wordle Archive. Find out more at nytimes.com/games.
My default word is always bread.
Why?
I like bread.
Always interesting to get Phil's perspective on stuff. He's one of Formula E's deep thinkers, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's one of the real sort of driving forces from a technical perspective, and a very passionate racer. Was a really good kart racer himself, by the way.
Was he?
Yeah, he was extremely capable, and he loves nothing more, as he touched on there, of working with the likes of Jean-Eric Vergne and Max Gunter, and really understands racing drivers, and has just got a real tenacious spirit, and you know what kind of race a Phil Charles team that he's involved in has had after 20 minutes after a race, because his sort of facial expression usually tells you before you speak to him.
He's not a poker face, is it?
No, definitely not. But it's great, isn't it? One of the real sort of passion players in racing, and long may it continue.
So, as I sort of alluded to in the intro, while we haven't had any racing for what feels like months, honestly, the cars and the teams have been in action, and the Evo Sessions played out. I'm assuming that most of the listeners to this know what happened, but maybe you could just, for those who don't, just take us through exactly what it was and what we know so far. But this isn't the end of it. What's happened, we have to make this clear. What took place on track in Miami is at the end of it. There's another piece to come. So we will reserve full judgment until we've seen that.
Yeah, when you strip it down, the Evo Sessions was essentially, I think a good phrase to use, a sort of broad phrase that fits all, is plug. It plugged that massive gap of 8 weeks, which was still in, amazingly. But it also plugged Formula E. It gave it a bit of a voice, a bit of noise in a time when it should have been racing, but wasn't, through the cancelled Thai race that was going to take place.
I've forgotten where we were supposed to be. Thailand.
Yeah, well, we should have been in the heat of Chiang Mai, which was the original.
It would be nice right now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't happen. But look, Formula E needed to have something to shout about, and they devised this concept called the Evo Sessions, whereby each team would have an influencer, so 11 influencers, stroke celebrities, I think is the best bracket you can call them, and they would essentially go on a sort of a journey of being prepped and simmed and trained to do a couple of sessions in a Gen 3 Evo car, the race cars, one of the team's race cars.
That was the bit I couldn't. That was unbelievable. They went out in the actual race cars.
Yep.
People who'd never, most of them, a couple had, but most of them had never driven anything more than a road car before in their life.
Indeed. When I sort of found out about this in, what would it have been, sort of October time, really, early October, that this was a initiative that Formula E were planning. Me, B2B, I'm not a skeptic particularly.
No, open-minded, especially when it comes to people who are famous for being famous.
Look, they got together a list of these influencers and celebrities, some of them quite interesting actually. Sergio Aguero, the Premier League legend with Man City.
I can't hear his name without doing the Martin Tyler in my head.
And Brooklyn Beckham, who is, of course, David Beckham's eldest son, a number of other personalities. That they were sort of usurped a little bit by a surprise.
Well, I mean, only the biggest guy. I mean, genuinely, probably the most famous personality in the world now. Certainly, if you're under 25.
The big beast, man. Yeah, MrBeast, who. I should know his real name, but I can't remember. Sorry, MrBeast.
Yeah.
But he turned up and drove. Well, he drove half a lap with Kiro and then put it in the wall, which was kind of manna from heaven for.
I mean, you couldn't script it. Or well, maybe you could.
I could almost see. Ellie Norman doing a little jig of joy with her marketing team at the events when that happened. Remarkable stuff, really. He's a massive personality. I mean, his numbers are an absolutely staggering, and I think a shout out probably
almost as big as this show, Sam. I think when I looked at some of his analytics, I was like, if we're not careful, he might overtake us.
Neck and neck. We're neck and neck still, I think. Yeah. I think a shout out is relevant here to John Wilde, who's the commercial manager for the Cupra Kiro team, who was very integral to getting MrBeast. If we can, sounds a bit odd calling somebody MrBeast, but that's who he is. I heard he was very engaged.
Mr. to you, sunshine.
He was very engaged. He was very active, and he loved what he did. And that can we have criticised Formula E quite a bit in the past for not pushing itself and not getting its name out there. We can't criticise these Evo Sessions. Is my stance.
You can't knock that.
You because. They delivered an enormous amount, and I think from looking at it and seeing some of the VNR footage that I got, I would say 4 or 5 of that group, particularly Beckham, Aguero, obviously driver 61.
Yeah, that's Scott Mansell, who did race properly. I remember him. He used to do that thoroughbred F1 thing, didn't he? He had something
Boss
F1. Yeah. Did he have a Benetton?
Yeah.
It was a proper car.
Yeah, 97 Benetton,
Yeah,
so one
that's-
in
I mean,
Burgt
that's
or
serious.
races, Benetton. So yeah, very, very capable driver, and obviously he was quickest by a good chunk, a good
as he
sort
should
of
be.
2.5, 3 seconds. But from day 1 to day 2, there were some really, really good performances and some really great times. Beckham was very good and impressed the team and made a big step on his second day. Aguero didn't quite improve on his second day because of I think he had a little issue with the brakes on his car. Emilia Hartford, which was a name I didn't know, but is a sort of actress stroke content creator, was extremely good for Maserati MSG. She did a very, very good time, and I watched her on her lap, and she was committed. I mean, fair play to these people coming in not completely cold, because they had some.
They'd done some sim work, hadn't they? So yeah.
But still, listen, if you chucked me or thee in that, it would be a very different story. I'm sure.
Thinking I'm going to be like half a tenth, something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to be upside down in the debris fence, to be honest with you, at best, if I got it quick enough to do that.
I'd like to see either of us getting in or out. Quite frankly.
Yes, I think it was a success in the sense that the event was put together pretty late. It was done on part of the Grand Prix track at Miami.
Well, it's their new sort of closed version that they can use effectively full time now, haven't they? They've got this members club there where people can hoon their supercars around. I think it's that version of the track, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It was. And, Nacho Caicedo, who, we both know has been there, a key part of putting these races on. He and his team played a bit of a blinder, really, in getting this event up and running at such short notice. I think it was a success. From what I saw, I wasn't there personally, but we had young Georgia Williams, who I worked with on a few things there, and she said that, yes, there were elements of a bit of chaos going on here and there, but ultimately it was a good event, a feel-good factor, and the content that came out was prolific. Obviously, the MrBeast angle boosted it significantly, and I think now it's a question of the conversion rates on the eyeballs that saw what was going on there, and how that translates to the new fans being picked up.
Right, this is the thing. Now they've got a race in Homestead. How many more weeks have we got to wait? Is it 3?
Well, by the time this goes out, it's going to be sort of 10 days off, isn't it?
Okay. So in 2 weeks' time, there's a race just down the road, by American standards anyway. In the UK, you'd probably be planning it for 3 months before you went that far. Well, we'll see, won't we? If the grandstands are full and all of MrBeast's fans have been converted to go and watch it, then it's been an overwhelming success, hasn't it?
Well, if all of MrBeast's fans are going to turn up at Homestead, they're going to have to
need a bigger
more
boat.
Security. Yeah, nice bit of Roy Schneider there. That's great. I think. There's 2 things really. The first one is this is the first event, right? And they have to have something similar to this, I think, in the future to make sure that it's an annual event of some description. I'm not saying on that sort of scale or that exact structure, but isn't this the perfect pre-season kind of event to get people engaged and interested?
Right, when the cars are no longer needed. Season, you could have a party and everything.
Yeah, I mean, there are challenges there with obviously the refresh of batteries and so forth, but there must be a way of making that happen. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the long-form documentary that they're making about this, the Evo Sessions, and how that fits into getting the engagement of fans and getting people to understand how amazing these cars are, how challenging they are to drive. Because don't forget that there was a key I would say potential threat that if other than driver 61, if Beckham or Aguero or Emilia Hartford or Supercar Blondie from Nissan, if they'd have been 0.8 off their driver's time, who set the benchmark time, people turn around and go, well, what's so special about drivers and Formula E. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, when I was there in Gen 1, obviously you could turn the car right down, and we just let everyone drive it. Funnily enough, we did a thing at Homestead where it was the first time Alejandro drove the car, but there were a load of other people. I remember Bob Varsha driving it. There were a few others whose names escape me now. And I was really worried at the time that it downplayed the skill that was needed to drive the car, because you'd seen Top Gear or whatever, Richard Hammond would go out. He couldn't get out of pit lane because F1 cars were that hard to drive, or he never got the tyres or brakes warm enough to be able to do a proper lap. Well, of course, because of how adaptable Formula E was, and quite benign, really, certainly the Gen 1 car, it was never really trying to kill you, meant that pretty much anybody could drive it. They, knew left from right and which pedal did what.
Yeah, I mean, that was a danger. But from what I saw and from the way I think obviously it's going to be portrayed in the documentary and some of the after sales of the Evo Sessions, I think it's going to be fine, and I think it's got some legs. I'm not saying that they should have a sort of it's a knockout sort of style thing. I don't think that would work, and I don't think this should be a live TV thing.
No, but I thought celebrity racing, there was always a place for it. Whether they were all out in 6R4s around Birmingham Super Prix or in whatever Toyotas they were putting on at Long Beach. I just thought it was a really good way of kicking off events and just getting a broader public interest in it. It doesn't have to be taken itself too seriously either, which I think is much needed in these times. It genuinely is a bit of fun.
Exactly, and I think some series somewhere sometime would benefit from having as part of their bill a celebrity race. A genuine celebrity race. I'm not talking Sue Pollard and Christopher Biggins. I'm talking.
Well, you are. That's who we want to see in it.
I think there needs to be. There is place. Formula E. When I go to the Excel, and obviously, usually I'm. I don't know what sort of time of day or what day it is usually because there's so much going on in Formula E. You're chasing your tail all over the paddock. There is a lot of dead time, right? There is. Okay, there's a concert and there's stuff going on and there's autograph sessions. But actually, between qualifying and the race, sometimes it's like 4 hours, right? 3.5, 4 hours. There is time there to do a half an hour race in whatever electric vehicles with a load of celebrities and film it and make a little after event documentary. I think that would work quite nicely.
Well, I always thought that those Twizzies were perfect for it because you get to see them. Because often the problem with racing is you can't really tell who's who. But you get them in an open-face helmet, and they could see who was who. And those things are quite ludicrous anyway, aren't they? But yeah, I think that time's passed.
Yeah, I just think that what they've created with this Evo Sessions, there's going to be some stuff you can extrapolate from it and make into a permanent fixture, a permanent event. And I think it can be done really, really nicely. And look, the fact that people like MrBeast and Aguero and Amelia Hartford and Beckham have been involved in this, there are lots of celebrities out there that are keen racers and keen tech heads, right? And I've seen
racing's cool at the moment, right? People want to be seen to be involved in it.
Yeah, so grab that. I've been in.
Obviously, racing's always been cool. Just for the record.
I've been in. Recently, I've been in the same orbit and the same working space as people like Patrick Dempsey, Michael Fassbender, and these are sort of huge global celebrities, and they love their racing. There will be the equivalent of a Fassbender or a Dempsey that are more all-electric orientated, right? And they're more technical orientated. And getting those people into Formula E, which to some extent is done, right? We've had DiCaprio at the odd event. We've had Orlando Bloom, these sort of people. But get them more engaged. Get them to have an experience in a car and do it properly rather than giving them a show car with cold tyres and let them shunt it into a wall, which poor old Mr. Bloom did.
Yeah,
so
we were there.
There's the pre-MrBeast, wasn't it? Mr. Bloom in the wall. But I think
didn't Thor put it in the wall in New York as well?
Who? John Thor?
Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about John Thor, the ex-Sweeney
Yes.
actor. I don't believe he was in the wall. If he,
put your trousers on, you're nicked.
He'd be in a Cortina in the wall, wouldn't he, if it was John Thor? You mean the Hemsworth guy, right?
Thor.
Chris Hemsworth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he bent one as well, didn't he?
I'm pretty sure he did.
But
there's a Christmas feature in this, Sam.
Appraisal wise, I would say it's a definite B+ for Evo Sessions, and there's more to come, and it's great. And listen, it is, as I said, we have criticised Formula E in the past. We can't criticise it for attempting something new and bold and innovative and engaging. So all power to them, and let's hope that it grows into something that pushes the Formula E message out to new generations and keeps new fans and gets new fans and keeps them engaged.
Absolutely. Well, it wouldn't be one of these podcasts without there being any other business, and of course, by any other business, we need a calendar update. So what's going on?
Well, the interesting story we ran a couple of weeks ago was centred around a potential second race in the US. Key market for Formula E, obviously, and somewhere where it's felt that a second race is needed. It's probably between the US and China in terms of where that might happen. And I think it's likely to happen in the US and possibly for 2026. And an old favourite, VDB, an old favourite of ours. If I say to you the word iceberg in Formula One context, what does it mean to you?
Well, I can just see Jean Alesi dancing down the inside of Ayrton Senna.
Exactly. And it's Phoenix, which hosted 3 Grand Prix, 89 to 91, with some incredible memories. The key for me, as I concur with you, is Alesi's acrobatics in 1990. And
I liked Phoenix. I thought it was a cracking little street race.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? As long as you didn't have it in June, which they did the first year, and it's like 150 degrees and
tyres literally melting on the track.
Everything melted. But Phoenix have been talking to Formula E ever since Portland in 2023, I think was the initial approach.
And what? How did that all come about?
Well, I believe that there was a significantly refreshed broker called Ave Vanderburgt who brokered that particular conversation. So
this is genuinely true.
Pat on the back.
So I'd gone to Portland because I'd always wanted to go to Portland. And I think either Jeff had just started or he was about to start. So I was invited over to the Emotion to meet him. And I was hanging around, as you do, because, it's a rare treat to be invited in anyway, and it's a very nice place to be. And I got talking to this woman, and she was very interesting. And she goes, I'm here representing the Portland Investment Committee. We'd like to do something. It's like, oh, hold on a second. And I looked around, and I saw Alberto, and I brought him over and made the introduction. And
you mean Phoenix? You said Portland. You mean Phoenix?
No. Sorry. Well, we were in Portland. Yes, he was representing the Phoenix investment.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, I need to make that very clear. And then, how many 2-3 years, 4 years later, something might be coming of it, and that's great. They were really nice people. There was somebody else there from them. They were really good to chat to. They downloaded as much of my knowledge as I could remember at that point. They had some very nice beverages going on, but and now it's coming off, and hopefully they won't run it in June.
Jeff Dodds has been over to Phoenix in the last few months, and I think just before Jeddah he was over there and having some meetings, and was fairly upfront about the fact that there is a desire from the capital of Arizona, I believe, to host something in or around the Phoenix area. So I think that's cooking along reasonably nicely. And next year's calendar, Jeff mentioned to me in Jeddah, will the provisional calendar he believes could be the first ever that doesn't include a TBA. We're going to miss those TBAs, aren't we? No TBA on a provisional calendar. Come on.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, let's hope.
I always used to joke when it was coming out, it's like, how many stars am I going to need for this release? Just to make sure I had enough asterisks up my sleeve.
So hopefully there is a full provisional, and I think we're looking at probably a December start at the end of this year, again, as we had likewise with Sao Paulo. All that's really known at the moment is that there could be a second US race. There is still, I think, the possibility of a Cape Town race, although it's unknown whether that that can be made reality for 26. And the London E-Prix, as we broke that news a few months ago now, would have an extension for 26, and there would be a race in now, we believe mid-August. The season will finish in mid-August 26.
Wow. I'll be on holiday. I'm set already. I won't be able to make.
Oh, there you go. You need to get in touch with the World Motorsport Council and get an asterisk in there for that.
Yeah.
Your holiday, three stars against it. To be confirmed. But I think it's going to be Formula E's best ever calendar, and the assumption is that there won't be anything beyond the sort of 3 to 4 week gap between December and August. So probably the biggest calendar that Formula E are going to have. We think the Tokyo E-Prix will be at a different time of year because there's some building work going on in and around the.
Oh, that's a shame. So you won't get the cherry blossom sort of break.
No, but neither are we this year because, of course, it's May this year. So I think there's going to be a sort of lack of consistency of when Tokyo is going to happen. But at least it's happening, and it's going to be a double header this year, and I assume it will be for 26 too. So as the intelligence comes in about what the calendar might look like, we'll obviously inform you, dear listener, dear reader, as well, of to how that makeup's going to be. But a second US race is probable and to an extent expected, I think, in some corners of the paddock for 26.
So on my notes here, I can't believe it at this time of year. Apparently the silly season has already started. Explain yourself, sir.
Well, the silly season's a bit like motorsport in general now. It's all year round, isn't it? Yes, there are some movements bubbling away, and I don't think it's going to be long before the percolation becomes an actual pour into the makeup of the grid for 2026 and season 12. And I think there are a few key angles. Obviously, we don't think there are any deals absolutely nailed on yet, but there are two strands. The first strand is what's going to happen, I think, with Porsche and Antonio Felix da Costa, which has been an ongoing debate really since about this time last year when we broke the story about his how do we put it, tetchy relationship with some aspects of Porsche at that time, and the fact that Nico Müller tested and was then subsequently signed as a Porsche factory driver. The assumption is, and it's an assumption I think still, is that Nico Müller will be promoted to the Works Porsche team for next season. However, will that still be the case if he is being soundly beaten by Jake Dennis in the same car, in the same team?
Well, I was going to say.
That's a big question mark. And the first quarter of the season has pointed to the fact that Dennis, like previous teammates that he's had, Gunter, Askew, Lotterer, Nato, it's all one-way traffic, that he soundly beats them and does it handsomely. If he does that to Nico Müller, will the plan, or the original plan, we believe, of Müller partnering Pascal Wehrlein for season 12 still present itself? That's the big question, I think. And I think a lot of the peripheral sort of aftershocks around that will determine where people are for season 12. Then there's the whole Stellantis situation, as we talked about previously, how that all fits in, where the drivers are with what that makeup is for Gen 4. And Gen 4 actually has quite an influence because the testing is going to begin later this year. There's going to be 2 prongs to each program, and the teams are going to need drivers in place and drivers in position to be part of that development testing. So it's a key factor, I think, into season 12, which is the last year of the Gen 3 rule set with the Evo car we still have. But concurrently, there's going to be this testing program, and I think it's going to be very interesting. There is a philosophy in place in the paddock that a number of the experienced drivers aren't going to be around for Gen 4. Does that mean that their services aren't required for next season, or do they hang on for one season to help develop a Gen 4 that they might not race? It's an interesting dilemma for some of the teams, but I do expect quite a lot of changes for next season. And look, there is potentially a key seat at Nissan up for grabs as well. Oliver Rowland is there long term, but what does that mean for who his teammate might be? Norman Nato has a history of being a team for one season only, and at present he's got nil points on the board. So
it's looking very much like that again, isn't it?
Well, Sergio Sette Camara's in the wings, hasn't he? And I found out last week that he was given a substantial amount of testing with Nissan.
Oh, interesting.
So that whether or not that was planned long term or whether it's something that the team is looking at, because Sette Camara is going to drive that car this year at Berlin because Nato is going to be at Interlagos in the clashing WEC race anyway. Do Nissan jump and make a change sooner than that? That's another key possibility, I think, that could happen this season. If Nato doesn't get the points that's expected of him in what could be described as the best package on the grid. So, yeah, let's see on that one. But lots happening, nothing to report yet. But we anticipate that that there could be at least some well-informed rumours that start to come to the fore in the next few races.
Okay, well, before we sign off, Formula E is going to a track that's new for a race in Homestead. Not the most usual of Formula E circuits. It's an infield of an oval circuit. What can we expect from this? What does the form that we've seen so far in the season, can any of that be distilled into this? Because it is basically completely different to the circuits we've raced on so far. Yeah, very much so. This has got the feeling of a sort of a Puebla type event, in the sense that it's in a sort of a stadium area, a stadium facility. I've been there a long time ago, I think about 20 years ago, for a sports car race, and I wouldn't have said it's the most aesthetically pleasing of circuits. Obviously, it's quite close to Miami, reasonably close, about 45 minutes away. Reasonably close.
It is in the Everglades, so yeah, I'm going to take my insect repellent, and I'm going to be on the watch for alligators. I don't recall seeing any gators, but there was a ton of insects. Yeah. I think all the a lot of the man-eating reptiles are in the paddock anyway, aren't they? At the moment. Hey. But look, it's a different track. It's going to be a big pack race. It's going to be a very high energy race in terms of managing your energy and lifting and coasting and all those things. I think in that regard it's going to be a bit Portland-esque, but obviously a bit more of a sort of contained stadium race rather than a parkland race as Portland was. There is a chicane that they've introduced on the back straight, which is obviously there for a sort of a regenning purpose. It could actually produce a really good race. I just fear that, if the energy targets are the same, we found out that it's a 38.5 kilowatt hours usable energy has been given to the teams who have started sim working this week. I just fear that it could be an extreme pack race and might have an element of the Mizanos about it, but at least this time, it is with the all-wheel drive, and we have this attack mode that allows drivers to pull away. But I mean, it's definitely going to be a pot boiler. It's definitely going to go to the last lap, possibly the last few corners. And look, as we've said before, how many series in the world can you say that about before an actual event? It's going to be drama laden. And also, there's a lot of narratives going on here. The Jaguar drivers absolutely needed to pull a result out. Yep.
After Jeddah, the Porsche guys do, and is Roland already in a position of just sort of a bit of consolidation, take a second or a third if that's what's there on offer? Yeah, exactly. I think it could be a real a real potboiler, and I think the way that it's gone already, we're looking at Nissan and Porsche have been at the top end, but as we've seen recently, Taylor Barnard, the boy wonder, could have a say about that. We thought that his lack of experience in sort of pack racing would pull him back and be a bit of a detriment to him and the way he went racing, but he did that absolutely perfectly in Jeddah, didn't he? So yeah, really hard to make any predictions about what might be going on there. But as we're on AOB and newsy things, something that hit my inbox quite recently was the fact that there's been some changes at the Envision Racing squad, and their technical director Mike Lugg
is no longer with the team, and we believe that Sebastian Buemi's race engineer, Connor Somerville, who previously worked for Jaguar and Dragon, is taking over at the helm as a certainly a technical manager there at the moment. Good young engineer, and great to see that they're promoting from within at Envision. But boy, is a change needed there. They really had a very difficult season and a half at least, really, and they needed to look at a different outlook and structure their team, and it seems like they've acted on that. And they've got some big races coming up at Envision, and they need to get some big points.
They certainly do,
very quickly.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Sam. As always, you can catch up with his latest musings on Formula E on the-race.com. Don't forget to check out all the rest of the stuff that we're doing. There's a new series of And Colossally That's History coming out soon, which I'm very excited for. And I'm off to have some gin and juice. Goodbye.
The Athletic.